My name is Charles Nazarian. I am the organ architect for C.B. Fisk, Inc. in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and the liturgical designer for Episcopal Emmanuel Church in Southern Pines, North Carolina. I'm seated in front of our scale model, in which you can see the organ and a gallery for the choir at the front of the church. This is a change from the current layout of Emmanuel Church, in which the choir and the current organ are in a rather tight rear gallery. What you're seeing in the scale model are the very first steps of rearranging the church and seeing how the various pieces can come together. We always build the scale model when we design a new pipe organ, and oftentimes a new pipe organ involves a renovation of an old building or building of a new building, in which we're looking at how the pieces can come together to best serve the liturgy, the music of the choir, as well as the organ. In this case, we're in our very initial stages of studying the way Emmanuel Church will be laid out in this new fashion. It made a great deal of sense to go in this direction because this end of the church can be changed with the least amount of expense as compared to the formal stone end at the entrance. And we can make good use of the space and increase the seating by almost 75 seats at a reasonable cost. The scale model itself is in 3/4 of an inch equals 1 foot, which is a scale that allows us to put our chin on the model floor and have a realistic impression of actually being in the space. In the later part of the video, we're going to take you for a bit of a tour inside of the room, as if you were there yourself, and you'll be able to see the logistics of the preliminary design. We've now moved our camera closer into the model so that you can see what the room looks like and have a little bit more sense of what it would be to be in the space after the renovation. It's a little different than it is today because you can see where my pointer is. The front wall of the church now occupies this area. So this is all solid wall with the current reredos up against it. The big change is that this solid masonry wall has been removed, and the reredos and the paneling that you see that is enclosing a stair on either side is freestanding in the space and providing a backdrop for the liturgical stage. This is the really new piece about the new concept, in that the two stairs, one on each side, and the paneling are forming in a new ensemble for the liturgical area. Beyond the reredos, with its prominent cross, you can see the choral terrace, in which there are 3 levels for the choir to sing, and then behind the choir stands the new Fisk pipe organ. This combination of open liturgical stage, stairs on either side, choral terrace, and organ provides the perfect acoustical setup for sound from the organ to come clearly down the nave and be able to lead congregational singing, and for the congregation to enjoy singing with the choir as the choir is singing towards them. The entire ensemble feels, in this layout, of one piece, and that's very important. What I described in my opening statement about a sense of harmony and balance is what we're seeking here. One can also see that light is playing a role, in that there is a little bit of light in this view coming in from a new set of clerestory windows, and we'll shortly move in and show you what that looks like up close. In this view, you can get an aerial shot looking almost as if you were up in the rafters of the church into the new chancel area. Several things are interesting about this layout. One is that you can see the grouping of the 3 new pews that have been brought to the front and add greatly to the usable seating in the church. Another is the shaping of the chancel area with a flat floor for almost the entire area except for that area for kneeling at the communion rail. The communion rail is not yet designed, and so it does not yet appear, but you can imagine that it would follow the upper step outline in this semi-octagonal form. The reredos, with its prominent cross, takes the center stage and provides the backdrop for the altar and for everything that happens in the space. And the space itself is very flexible, so that in the circumstance that one might have a concert at the front, the furnishings can be removed. For example, the altar and the pulpit and the baptismal font can all be removed, and even the reredos itself can be removed in order to show the organ console, so that if one was having a concert with orchestra and organ, the orchestra can take this central area, and with the addition of a very light railing here, the organist would then be visible and safe into the room. This is a very flexible way to configure the front and would provide Southern Pines with not only a beautiful church to visit, but also a concert room which the community does not have at this point, and a concert room with beautiful acoustics, which makes all the difference. We've moved the camera again so that you can get a good view of how the choral terraces, the clerestory with its raised roof, and the new organ will look together. There's a lovely mysterious quality that comes from the light of the clerestory infilling the area over the choir, and the raised ceiling makes the clerestory possible. The raised ceiling also makes possible an organ of sufficient power and scale for the newly enlarged room at Emmanuel. It will be an instrument with a commanding and beautiful tonal voice, suitable for all kinds of liturgical settings, for choral accompaniment, and for the major pieces in the organ literature. Even though the clerestory is lighting the choral terraces and the organ, however, one can see that the cross and the reredos still remain the central focal element. The organ and the choir are forming a tapestry and a background for the liturgical center. And that's the balance that we will be working to keep as the design is refined. The organ itself has its console located just behind the reredos. And so during most church settings, one would not see the organist conductor behind the reredos. The screen with the cross will provide the modesty of the space so that one is not really aware of what the organist and choir master is doing. However, the reredos can be removed for concert settings in which one wants to see the organist and see what he or she is doing, not only with his hands, but also with his feet. The change to the roof is an important part of the scheme that we've developed for Emmanuel Church. We would not be able to do what you see if the roof merely continued at the same height as the current nave. But raising the roof in this way is actually a fairly simple structural operation, and it greatly enriches the possibilities for the choir, for the organ, and for the concert use of the space. You can also see that in the setting where one might have a small orchestra in the front area and the liturgical furnishings are removed, that there is a perfect arrangement for a conductor, for an ensemble, such as for a Bach setting with choir and organ, and for the choir, organ, and orchestral pieces to all have their sound blend beautifully in the room. But for everyday Sunday use, the layout that you see is a perfect balance of liturgical and musical function. Well, you've now seen the inside of the model and the various ways that we're working on laying out the front of Emmanuel Church. The concept is still in the working stages. We can't emphasize that enough. But our intent is, when we're done, that the organ and the choir loft and the changes to the room will look as if they had always been that way, so that a visitor to Emmanuel Church will come in and find all of the elements of the room completely in harmony and at ease. At the same time, for the most reasonable cost possible, we will have added 75 seats to the room, and that will allow the program at Emmanuel Church to expand in a wonderful way in all kinds of venues, whether the traditional church service or for other programs such as concerts at the front of the church. We're glad that you could take this little tour with us and see the exciting first steps that we're making. And we hope that you might see a follow-up of this when the design is near completion.